Good evening from Beijing. I'm Kate Kui. Today we are very honored to have two important guests joining us to discuss the bilateral trade, investments and business cooperation between China and France. Well, these two important guests are Bruno Bézard, who is now the managing partner of Cathay Investments and also former Vice Minister of Finance in France. Well, the other important guest's name is Peng Guodong. He is the president of Zongteng Group. Well, Zongteng Group provides logistics services all across the globe. Europe and France is one of their very important business destinations. Bruno, now you're back to China finally after 3 years' time. How do you feel about the growth momentum in China?
You know, Kate, I've been in China for, 1 week now. And what I've been doing all day long is discussing and meeting with Chinese entrepreneurs. Most of them from our portfolio in Cathay, we invest a lot in Chinese companies, in French companies as well. So I met with many Chinese entrepreneurs, and of course, Guodong is a perfect example. And for me, this is the best way to learn about what's really going on in China. You know, the macro is nice to listen to, but more important is the real life and the real business. So I can tell you my feeling after 1 week meeting day and night with Chinese entrepreneurs is I found again what I love in China, which is positive energy, which is hard work, which is growth, and a sky is the limit. So, you know, for example, we invested in Zongteng, the company that Guodong is running a couple of years ago, and the growth has been amazing. And it's only the beginning. And I think they are doing very nice work also in Europe, and we're trying to help. That's just an example. Yesterday in Ningbo, I met another company in which we invested. Organic growth is 25% a year. And also they take care about environment, ESG, they're getting certified in a couple of weeks. So I am not saying that there are no issues in the Chinese economies. I've been a policymaker in the past, and in every country you have issues. I'm not saying there is no issue, but what I'm sure of is that whatever the issues are, they are going to be fixed. And I'm really confident in the Chinese economy. One thing that many people in the Western world don't realize is how strong China is in terms of innovation. That is something that most people, or many people don't really understand in the Western world. And that is extremely striking when you come to China. So the mindset that sometimes we have in the Western world is a bit dated, is a bit outdated. I mean, we see sometimes China as China was 10, 15 years ago. That's totally different. And I think people should come to China more often to see the reality, not only reading newspaper. Come and see the reality.
Well, what are the key business areas that China and France can mutually leverage each other, according to your experiences?
I think Chinese and French entrepreneurs have many common points. They work hard. They work like crazy. They get up early in the morning and they want to be successful. There are, of course, cultural differences. The market is not the same. China is an emerging economy, getting stronger and stronger every year. Europe is more a mature economy, so 25% growth organic in Europe is quite difficult. It happens sometimes more often in China, so the environment is different. But there are many sectors in which we can work together. And in Cathay, we've been investing in many Chinese companies, helping them to grow in Europe and helping a lot of French companies, small and medium companies, to grow in China, fixing issues, being very down to earth, helping them with their M&A, also with business development. Which sectors? Many sectors. Let me give you just a couple of examples. Food industry, I think France can bring a very long experience in building brands and also protecting local food genuine origin. This is something that France is quite good at. Another example, financial industry, where China can bring more than 10 years experience of full digital payment with nearly no cash. This is something that is very interesting. Logistics, and Guodong is an expert. Logistics is a field where China has a huge know-how, in particular how to fix the problem that all the these companies have, which is the last mile. And if you live in China, you realize how the Waimai and so forth, the delivery is extremely efficient. Another example, healthcare. In France, we are a leader in, for example, in surgery robotics. In Cathay, we invested in a surgery robotics company. China has an amazing and a world-leading capacity in transforming technology into products. And France, on the other hand, has an amazing research and development with a strong government support and an amazing technology that can become great products. So you can see easily that there is a win-win potential cooperation in this field. And we can also mention the clean energy, where we're doing a lot of things between France and China.
Right. Basically, Bruno, you mentioned business culture. This is indeed very important. Guodong, I understand that the French market and also European market are your very important business destinations. What are the difficulties you have encountered while you expand your business internationally?
So firstly, it's about the internal management between China and our Euro management teams. Because when we found out this company, lots of my TMT teams in China, they didn't speak English or French, and they didn't live in Europe. So they don't understand the policies and the cultures in Europe. So finally, we appointed a Chinese person who are general managers in Europe, and he understands the culture and the legality and the human resource, financial. He knows everything locally. And then we appointed a local VP to in charge of all the branding, business development, customer service, and the China teams. We are focused on product and our service. So finally, with the 3 years efforts, currently we are much more better to manage our business between China head office to Euro head office. And secondly, the most important thing is about the human resource, financial, and the legality. We need to set up everything before the business starts.
Well, small to medium enterprises recovery are extremely important because they represent the most of the GDP growth in both China and Europe. So what do you think are the critical measures or the policies that government can extend to support their growth and recovery?
I think small and medium companies are absolutely key to the growth. It's the same in all countries, not only in China, but also in France, for example. And so the government in France has always been supporting the development and the growth of small and medium companies. For example, this is something which is maybe interesting for you to know. In France has the strongest R&D tax incentive in Europe. It's very strong. So this is why we have a very strong innovation and a lot of clusters, innovation clusters in France, with again a very strong support from the government. We have an institution which is called the National Development Bank, BPI, French, which is supporting a lot of small and medium companies. So this creates an ecosystem, and this has a huge value. So supporting small and medium companies is important. But let me be very clear. Money is nice, but it's not enough. So in Cathay, for example, we inject equity. We put money into the companies. We support them by money, but much more than money, because money is a commodity. But you need to support the companies by helping them to grow, by pushing them in their international expansion, by helping them to solve issues. We are trying to do this every day with the portfolio, the companies in which we invested. French companies, we help them to grow in China, and companies like Guodong's company, Zongteng. We help them, for example, to have a partnership with the French post office system for the last mile delivery. We also, Guodong has been working like crazy to have a direct line from Shenzhen to Paris. We try to help and try to help them to build a hub in Paris airport. This is very concrete. This is not just theory and just talking. This is concrete action to support the daily life and development of the companies we invest in. So investing in small and medium companies is key because this is where the growth is coming from. Yes, absolutely.
How do normal French people think of China market nowadays? How important is China market in your view?
Well, first of all, let me say a few things. France and French people have always been interested in China.
Right.
Interested in the culture, interested in the history. Let me remind you, everybody knows in China that France was the first country to recognize China. So there is a special relationship between France and China. It doesn't mean we always agree on everything, but it means we are good friends and we talk to each other. And as you know, our president is visiting China. So the bilateral relation has always been very fruitful. Many discussions, many common projects. In Cathay, we have been specializing actually in building Sino-French funds to help cross-border investment development. So, and if you look at the biggest French company, the Fortune 500 companies of France, they all have a huge business in China. I sit on the board of a couple of these companies, and they have a lot of factories in China. And I have to say, and I'm always very proud for my Chinese friends and colleagues, that usually the factories in China are the most efficient. And they do care for environment, which is something extremely important. So the business in China has always been important for the biggest French companies, but also for small and medium companies. As I said, in the middle of France, in some provinces, you have companies, very excellent technology in a niche, and they want to grow in China, and we help them to do that. So it's extremely important. And there is a strong curiosity for the French people in general about China. If you go to a French bookshop, you will see so many books about the Chinese history. That is important. That means people care, and people are very interested about China.
Well, you mentioned, from an ordinary French citizen's perspective, they love China, they're interested in Chinese culture and Chinese history. What about the policy makers level? Do they hold a consistent view, or the views are rather divergent to a certain extent?
Well, I'm not in politics, and I'm not in policy making anymore for 7 years. So I will just react as a private person, as a citizen. We are European. We are not Americans. And Europe has a different vision of China. We are not afraid of competition, if it's fair. So we want a fair competition, but we are not against competition. And France has always supported the growth of China. So we are not against. On the contrary, we are very happy to see China growing and to see the level, the life quality of hundreds of millions of Chinese improving year after year. I can see, I've been around France and China for more than 15 years now. I can see the difference. So France has always supported, for example, internationalization of renminbi, has always supported having China joining some important international organization. When China created the IIB, we supported and we joined. So we have a kind of a very friendly attitude towards China, even though we care about fair competition, which is of course something important in the industry for everybody, and China also cares about fair competition, I guess. But so we are quite positive. Then you may say that there are differences between people, of course, because of course some people know China a little bit, some people don't know China, and they just know what they read in the newspaper. And what you read in the newspaper and the reality, sometimes there is a gap. So I can tell you that maybe it's a nice way to answer your question. When I'm back from China, this will happen in a couple of days, all of my friends, people, business leaders or whoever, whatever they do, they always ask a lot of questions about China because they want to know the reality. They want to know what Chinese people think. What do they do in the morning? What do they dream about? What kind of book they read? What kind of TV program or film? What kind of food they eat? People are curious about China and friendly.
Well, Guodong, apparently your business is very international and you have a very diversified revenue mix from all the geographic locations across the world. Have you encountered any difficulties when you bring your business abroad?
Okay, for the past 3 years, USA is our #1 market, and it takes 45% of the total revenue of Zongteng Group. EU, it takes 40% of our total revenue. After UK Brexit from EU, France is our #1 market in EU, and we are shipping 30 million parcels from China to EU, and Germany is our #2 market. So for single countries, France is our #2 from China to global.
So,
and their company choose Paris to be the hub for Europe.
Our core business is B2C shipment, where we are supporting the China e-commerce sellers to shipping small parcels from China to EU. There are several reasons why we chosen Paris. Firstly, France is our #1 consumer market for B2C parcels. This is the #1 reason. And secondly, is a friendlyship about the French custom officers. Until today, we cannot do B2C custom clearance for small parcel in Frankfurt, but we can do in CDG in France. And the #3 is the most important thing is by the helping of Cathay Capital, with the help of Bruno, we are get a very good relationship with the French government, including CDG Airport, CDG Custom Officers, and La Poste. So this is the reason why we finally chosen CDG as our Euro hub. We bought 2 Boeing 777 charters from China Eastern Airlines last year, and we are planning to place all the 2 Boeing 777 between Shenzhen Airport and France and to CDG. So by on August 1st this year, we will sending scheduled flights between Shenzhen to Paris. So every week we will fly 6 charters from Shenzhen to Paris.
My last question, and also a very important question to you, is do you think government has done enough to support the growth of SMEs?
You never do enough for small and medium companies because this is where jobs are created more than in big companies. I have nothing against big companies, of course, but small and medium companies are the part of the economy where the job creation is the strongest. So you never do enough. Regarding my country, I will only talk about what we do in France, and I am talking as a private citizen, not as a policymaker. I think supporting R&D, research and development, is key, because R&D costs a lot of money. And some companies could not afford to do as much R&D as they do if there was no tax incentive. So we have the strongest tax incentive in Europe. It costs a lot of money to the government, but it's extremely efficient. And this is why there is so much innovation. Then another thing we can do, and in my previous responsibilities as running government departments, I've been trying to do, is to make public service as much business oriented as possible. Guodong said that custom officers are friendly. I would not say friendly. They just try to be business oriented and to do their job properly, to serve the customers. And the customers is the general public, but also the businesses. So we need to have government services that are as business oriented and customer oriented as possible. And digitalization is key in government. In France, for example, tax revenue, inland revenue, or IRS, as we would say in the US, or 税务局 in China, I think, is totally digitalized, and it changes the life of everybody, in particular small business, because you don't spend so much time in the bureaucracy. It's easy, it's quick. There is still a lot to be done. If you talk with French people, they will say it's not good at all because people like to complain, right? In particular in France. So we still have a lot to do. But supporting small and medium companies is important. Helping them to grow internationally, as Guodong is doing, is key. In France, we have a special agency to do that. It's quite efficient, and they push companies to go abroad, to go abroad, and to solve all the issues that they have abroad. But people like us, this is our DNA. This is what we do every day. This is our bread and butter, as we say in English. This is what we try to do. We invest in a company, and the next day, we try to deliver a service to help them, to support them. And this is extremely important because you can see the impact of your action. It's right. Extremely clear.
Guodong, what do you think?
Okay, for my business, my dream is to becoming a Chinese company that can providing similar service like DHL, FedEx, and UPS. So I can see right now the DHL, UPS, and FedEx in China, they can get very good infrastructures in many airports, like Hong Kong Airport, Shanghai Airport, and Shenzhen Airport. So I personally, I wish the government can give me the same policies like DHL, FedEx, and UPS as the China companies. This is my only request.
Great. While the whole world is recovering from COVID, we really look forward for a prosperous 2023. While in the meantime, of course, we are expecting more cooperation between China and France.